I am the best person to do this because I know you on a level that most people will never get to see. And I've known you for 18 years. It really feels like a member of my family is hurting, and I feel it every day.
You know, I've been in positions before where I've been attacked and for different things in different ways, but nothing that's reached this level of volume.
I don't think you've ever tried to position yourself as an immaculate guru. What I've seen is you be a bleeding, sweating human being that is wearing your heart on your sleeve and talking about everything that you learned through all of your mistakes for many years now.
An error we made on the podcast when we called it Radical Monogamy in the Field of Erotic Mystics, it should have been called Radical Fidelity, because fidelity is being faithful to the truth.
And I think that's something that people don't think about when they attack the image of another human being that they've never met, or that they feel like they understand from a tiny sliver of a perspective that they get from something like a podcast, is how many people who love them, who are standing beside them, who are their family, get hurt.
It's this phenomenon of just putting a label on someone to negate the nuance of their humanity, whether it's narcissist, conspiracy theorist, whatever you want to call somebody, label somebody the cause for every witch hunt, every inquisition, every war.
There's so much complexity to the interior human experience, and that gets completely lost as soon as we put a label on somebody.
Yes, I care about what people think about me, and also I can't care that much. That doesn't preclude the deep compassion that I have for people who've been through a lot of pain and trauma, especially the women. Mm-hmm. You know, there's a lot of women who've been through a lot of pain and trauma, and you're one of them.
There's a value that you're working through of having certain things reflected to you that's helping you really drop in and say, okay, what are my blind spots? What am I not seeing?
Am I like Sauron, Lord of broken promises and failed rings? Is that who I am?
You never, ever tore me down. You constantly invited me to see how magnificent I was. You know, a lot of people are so dishonest and treating me so badly. And all I knew from being with you was being treated like a queen. And so thank you for seeing me. Thank you for never being one of those men.
Firstly, I want to acknowledge that we're dropping this podcast in the midst of a chaotic world situation. There are riots, there are wars, there are challenges that are enormous beyond our comprehension. And in this podcast, we're asking very personal questions. We're talking about the way that the podcast that I did with Vylana, Alana, and Dr. Gaffney, how that had rippled out into the collective and the impact that that's had and the questions that that's caused me to ask myself. Who am I? What am I here to do? What is really in my shadow? What is really going on underneath the surface? This is the most raw and vulnerable podcast I've ever released. And so thank you to all of you for following the story. And I'm happy to have my best friend in the whole wide world, Caitlyn Howe, with me to share this story. Caitlyn Howe, here we are.
I'm in Marcus. We're back.
We're back. This has been an intense month. You've been my friend for 2 decades now. We were wild and passionate partners. You're my fiancé, and you've been friends with every partner that I've been with since and known them well. In some cases, you know, even best friends like you are with Vylana now. And so I guess the first question I want to ask you is, you know, how has this been for you to see everything that's been going on?
It's been, this experience this past few weeks has absolutely broken my heart. Really has. beside you for many years, walked a path of tremendous enthusiasm for humanity and for possibility, for healing, with a big fire of compassion in my heart. And it's been really crushing to see just everything that I've seen from behind the scenes of your life. The deep, personal, earnest devotion in every single way that you've poured yourself into service for this planet. And to watch what's been the most difficult side of human nature be unleashed on you and sharing your story and opening up your heart. And I was nervous to come on today because I never understood until this month how vulnerable it truly is to put yourself out there and share personal stories in the ways that you do on these shows and in your work and your writing. And it has really shocked and shaken my system to feel like I know you so well, to know that I know you so well, to know that I know your good heart, and to see the kinds of slander that's been placed upon your head over the past few weeks, and to feel like, I feel like I'm in a unique position. There's a little bit of fear of, I'm going to, come out and open my heart now after watching all of this viciousness and share some of my story and hold you through this process of getting to share a little bit more of yours. But I am the best person to do this because I know you on a level that most people will never get to see. And I've known you for 18 years. And it really feels like a member of my family is hurting, and I feel it every day. And I think that's something that people don't think about when they attack the image of another human being that they've never met, or that they feel like they understand from a tiny sliver of a perspective that they get from something like a podcast, is how many people who love them, who are standing beside them, who are their family, get hurt in those same arrows of pain that are cast. And I feel both the fear and the sacred duty to step forward and speak to the person that I know and stand with you. So it's been really hard. It's been really hard. Yeah.
And that's been one of the hardest parts for me is that, I've been in positions before where I've been attacked and for different things in different ways, but nothing that's reached this level of volume and kind of just the meanness that people have shared, and to think about those who love me like yourself. And I think about my mama too,
Mm-hmm.
and like having people cackling and being like, Aubrey Marcus is a garbage human. And I think about her like holding my feet and how we've loved each other since the fucking beginning and never wavered. And just, I'm grateful that she's not, on the internet in the way that all my dear friends are. But I think about you and, of course, my, beloved wife, Vi, and Alana, and everybody who loves me, and just think like, how hard that is, because I know how hard it would be for me. Like if people were coming at you like this, like try and hold me back.
That's how it felt.
Like fucking try and hold me back, Like I don't know how I could do it.
I think about it every day. And it's, one of the things that really broke me down also is like at first, this has been incredibly painful to see the way that the venom has come towards you. But as I tuned in with Alana, feeling her an aspiring poet, and already she is a poet. She just, is still in the process of bringing forward her work. And she's a very private person. And she did a brave thing by coming on and talking about this, intimate structure. And when I reached out to her to check in with her, just feeling, her devastation at feeling like she didn't get a chance to be seen. And there's a great sorrow in that. And I've heard, we've sat in circle with our dear friends. We've had lots of conversations about the best way to walk through this moment. Is it something, a lot of people handle controversy like this and slander like this and in the public perspective by just not addressing it and turning away and not saying and not giving it any attention or energy. And that's a very valid way to cope and to handle it. And there might be some, intelligence to that for sure. And I felt you doing your very best to get to that place of like, I don't care what people think about me. But at the end of the day, I think that something dies a little bit when we stop caring. Mm-hmm. And in our heart of hearts, human beings, we deeply want to be understood. We deeply want to be understood. And so feeling this just so suddenly personally aware of the fallout and the collateral damage of these sort of phenomenon where people, get into sort of a mob mentality and find a story that justifies what feels to me like bullying, no matter how powerful that person might seem or how justified it might feel. It brought up a lot for me also with my personal history, which is, when I was young, when I was about 12 years old in middle school, I was bullied by groups of girls for being a slut. And I'd never even kissed a boy. And they would surround me and call me names. And it viscerally lights a fire in my body where it's like, no, I want to stand up against this. And not with force and not with the same energy, but with the torch of compassion. That's like, we have got to do better than this by each other.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this phenomenon of just putting a label on someone to negate the nuance of their humanity, whether it's slut or narcissist or whatever you want to call somebody, or, conspiracy theorist, or you can count the names by a dozen, but you label somebody and then you negate their humanity, and it's the cause for every witch hunt, every inquisition, every war, every atrocity is this idea that you can completely negate the humanity of another person by ascribing them to a label that contains them in their entirety. Mm-hmm. And it's part of the propaganda that's allowed people to go to war from the beginning. And then the moment why it's so subversive, like that Christmas Day in World War where they were playing soccer, the Allies and the Germans were playing soccer with each other. And like, that's so subversive because then they realize that they're just kids. Mm-hmm. They're just kids like that want to play soccer. Mm-hmm. And like, as soon as we recognize humanity, like all of the vitriol starts to stop. But as long as someone's, left-wing extremist, right-wing Nazi, whatever you want to call it, and it's not that there aren't, movements or things that need to be fought against, like the Ku Klux Klan, for example. Like, yeah, all right, it's fucked up. Like, we need to fight against anybody who identifies with that type of ideology. But at the same time, we have to understand like the unique human prism underneath that. Like, this is the evolution of consciousness that we need. And the irony of this whole thing is that it's come from within what you would, in quotations, call the spiritual community, who are acting in the opposite way that any true spirituality is. Old spirituality, like Lakota spirituality, aho, mitaku, yeo, yasin, we are all related. Like, hello? Hello?
Yeah.
What happened to the basic tenets? And also, like, that doesn't preclude the deep compassion that I have for people who've been through a lot of pain and trauma, like especially the women. You know, there's a lot of women who've been through a lot of pain and trauma. And, you know, you're one of them. When I met you, you were in a relationship where you were experiencing a lot of pain and trauma, you know, or coming out of it. I don't remember the exact details, but...
It's on the way out.
On the way out.
Not out.
And then subsequently have had your own further experiences, and those details are not important.
Very many, yeah.
But what's important is to just recognize that, like, I get it. You know, like, men have been shitty. Women have also been shitty. I remember when my college girlfriend cheated on me with one of my best friends, you know, and I remember how fucking devastating that was and how it hooked me in this desire to continually prove myself as worthy. And then she would keep, you know, her infidelities and her own manipulative strategies to keep me hooked in. And it made me insane. Yeah. So it's not like it's only men that have hurt people. Of course, there's, you know, we share in the responsibility. The infidelity numbers are not just men cheating on women. It's also women cheating on men. And that's only one vector of the type of, you know, challenging situations.
And that's only what's being reported, you know.
For sure. For sure.
Not that it's a laughing matter, but it's just, there's so much complexity to the interior human experience. And that gets completely lost as soon as we put a label on somebody, especially when that label is coming with the charge of and this is not to say that, you know, we shouldn't speak what we're feeling or what we're seeing, of course. There's a value that you're working through of having certain things reflected to you that's helping you really drop in and say, okay, what are my blind spots? What am I not seeing? And what I'm sitting here for today is for you, because I love you, absolutely. And also because it feels I'm passionate about all of us taking extra discerning steps at this time when the collective is going through so much shock and disorientation, and there's lots of global strife and helplessness and frustration and anger. And it's so easy to discharge that energy onto somebody else once they have a label. And it is imperative, I think, right now that we stop and take a breath and rehumanize the people individually that we are aiming our energy at, and really drop in and reconsider the mystery and the beautiful complexity of the interior human soul. And you know, I feel like I got a bit paralyzed in this because of taking those steps. There was certainly a fighter in me that wanted to immediately stand up and charge and kind of bite back. And that's an impulse I think we all have when our values feel threatened. So I was able to feel...
Or one of our beloveds.
Beloveds feel threatened. Right, totally. Our family. But what I was able to do was kind of pause and recognize, okay, if I react in certain ways that my impulses are telling me to, I'm falling into the same pattern.
Same level of consciousness that created the problem in the first place.
Yes.
And, you know, there's a primal impulse, and this impulse gave rise to the name scapegoat, because a scapegoat used to be a sacrificial ritual where they would place all of the evil and all of the free-floating anxiety that the culture was feeling onto a goat, and then they would slaughter that goat. And then with the slaughtering of that goat, it would temporarily assuage this free-floating anxiety because they would feel like they killed the evil. But the scapegoating impulse was also part of all the public hangings and all the public burnings and all of this. It was like, let's put all the evil onto this. And then crowds just cheering as people were tortured, because there's this primal impulse to externalize the discomfort you're feeling within, place it on an animal or a person or a group of people, and then scapegoat them and then destroy them. But it's only a temporary solution. It will never actually address the deeper issues that you feel. It works for a hot minute. It's like a pseudo solution.
And also the deep subconscious awareness that you're actually affecting harm and participating in violence, whether that's psychological, emotional, or physical violence. I think about the essence of what's happening a lot of the time in culture when we find somebody who has enough evidence to seem like they're worthy of taking that position and being the one that gets scapegoated for something that, is a collective pain point, is a big wound, is a trauma point for a lot of people. As soon as we start to do that, we start to participate in the same pattern of conscious response that people were using when they went on those witch hunts, when they went and did those rituals with these living beings. And I think about the deep effect, deep down, maybe on the surface to the conscious mind at that point in time, that felt like it was relieving some kind of collective or tribal frustration. Maybe it was creating a sense of peace or a perception of safety in the community, if it was a witch hunt or whatever. But deep down in the subconscious, in the body, we, human beings have carried the wound of remorse and guilt and sorrow for participating in those kinds of torture without trial, without due process.
Right.
And I was watching that. It might sound extreme to compare these things, but that's really one of the first things I thought of with this, because a lot of the accusations and name calling that I saw happening was coming from people that I regarded as spiritual leaders or spiritual, teachers at least. And I was watching this kind of feeling like, well, this is in the witch hunt, nobody cared if the witch was really guilty. They just wanted to see the witch burn. And that broke my
throw
heart.
her in the river, and if she swims, she's not a witch. Or if she swims, she is a witch. And if she drowns, she's not a witch.
Oh, she wasn't a witch.
So either way, she's dead.
Yeah. And we've got to stop this.
If she swims, she burns. And if she drowns, she's innocent, but oh well. Yeah, God rest her soul. Yeah, and that was literally, one of the trials. And this is hyperbolic, and it's not to, ultimately what's happening to me. The pitchforks are made of pixels, and, the arrows are made of letters. So we're fortunate we're in a different time. There's not a mob of angry people, who are going to put me and tie me to a stake and then light me on fire slowly. Like, that's not actually going to happen. And the fact that did happen is one of the darkest elements of our human history possible. Mm-hmm. In this story, though, you have the unique position. And also, I've had to come to the point where, yes, I care about what people think about me. And also, I can't care that much. I have to be willing to play the sacrificial scapegoat if that's what's necessary, because maybe for some it'll be the mirror that reflects it. And am I willing to do that? Am I willing to be the devil for some? Because ultimately that role, may be necessary for what their own karmic evolution needs. So my peace, which is hard fought and I'm still working at it every day, my peace comes with a greater understanding that perhaps I do need to play this role for now. Mm. And at the same time, I also want to help those who are willing to see what's been going on in their own mind, and so that they can travel this evolutionary path, what they've believed in their own metacognition, their own, information gathering, their own epistemological process of how they get to know what they know. And so in this story, like, tell your experience about us getting together.
Yeah.
What it was like to be with me. I'm young, I'm dumb, I'm wild.
Okay.
But like, who's Chris Marcus? And again, I changed my name from Chris to Aubrey right around the time that we were splitting when I first did my ayahuasca. But I was Chris Marcus back then. Still the same person. I just went by my middle name after that. But what was it like to be with Chris Marcus?
Yeah, I just want to say, I hope people who are listening and watching this will feel the truth of my heart and my body as they share these things. We did not even get to have a drop-in conversation before this podcast. And I was like, oh, I want to do right by this opportunity to talk about this because it is so personal and it's sacred to me. And I want people out there to understand that I'm very proud. I'm very proud of our relationship. And that's what makes me so angry. Because to disgrace relationship with you is a disgrace to one of the things I'm the most proud of in my entire life. And that's the truth. And I know to the marrow of my bones that that's not an illusion. It has been a hard-won, precious treasure of my path and hard-won. I could have absolutely chosen the path of distance when we separated to soften the pain of separation. And I didn't. And I want to tell as many people who have the hearts to listen why. I met you, Aubrey. I met you when I was about 23 years old. And we've told this story already on podcasts, so we won't spend too long on it. It's out there, but...
what was I, 27 then?
You were 25.
I was 25.
You were 25. You were young. Maybe even, because we're 2 years apart. So yeah, you were 25. And I'll give him this. He is very charismatic, and he has been since the drop, and he has been since before he, made the on it money and all those things. All of that wasn't even an idea yet. He had a marketing company, and he was flashy then, you guys. He was like, this is not, I giggle and sneer at the same time at the spiritual materialism kind of like arrows. And it's like, the man likes nice things. He likes him some nice things, and he's been that way probably since you came out of the womb. But you were brooding, emotional, charismatic, magnetic, generous, and romantic. And he courted me, and it was, looking back, I'm 42 years old now. And looking back, it was a blessing. It was a totally new world getting to fall in love with Chris Marcus and have our first date be in Las Vegas and all of this. And it was a wild ride of goodness. Like, I remember, when we met, he hadn't had any ayahuasca yet. There's so many funny things that have popped out of this current trendy conversation about doing too much psychedelics or whatever. And so it's just I laugh at these.
But I was doing psychedelics. I started when I was 18.
You were.
At that point, I was 7 years deep into, and I actually did ayahuasca once. It just didn't do anything except make me poop. Like that's so I don't count it as the first time because it didn't really affect me.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it was a more sporadic thing. It was certainly like,
because I lost contact with my first shaman who brought me through journeys when I was 18, 19, 20, 21. And then we kind of just went our separate ways. And then I was on my own path of exploration.
Yeah, I still remember you teaching me what chi was. That was like my first step into my, spiritual exploration. I was a bartender and a model, and I was just like living the good life in the sacred profane, all of that. And it was a real beautiful first magnificent love. I got to travel out of the country for the first time. You're very mature. We sincerely, I actually think you remember us fighting more than I remember us fighting. To me, I could probably recall on one hand in nearly 6 years together, fights that stood out. That was not characteristic of our relationship. We had a really powerful synergy, and you were generous with me. And one thing I will say is that's very distinctive about you between other people that I've dated is you never, ever tore me down. You never tore me down. You constantly invited me to see how magnificent I was. You constantly called forward the queen in me, very literally. You'd make me vision boards of my so I could see you made me an altar, and you made me a vision board for my queen, and wrote me poetry and surprised me and did so many things that I never experienced that level of honor, really. And always celebrated me, always put me on the pedestal. There was no icky, if I got too big, you had to, make me feel less than. Never. Not even when we split, which was definitely one of the most painful and challenging experiences of my life. But even then, and we can explore the details of all of that if that feels like where we want to go with this. But even then, I will say I distinctly remember, and I don't know if I've shared this on a previous podcast when we talked about our journey, but I remember standing in the parking lot one of the last times I saw you before I left on my own odyssey, which turned into my dark night of the soul and just a wild adventure that I would never trade for anything, by the way. I remember you saying, "Caitlyn, you're the best of the best. Go out there and light up the world."
Still true. Still true.
And and I was pissed. I was like, whatever, bye. So it wasn't but I carried it with me in the dark, in some of the darkest environments. And I don't mean this to shame any region. I love Las Vegas forever, a piece of my heart. I love Hollywood in an artistic way. As a writer, I love it. But one thing that happened for me, comparatively to maybe what happens for a lot of people when they go through big breakups that are super painful, is by contrast, when I got into the ordinary world, so to speak, if you think about the hero's journey kind of frame, I went out into the wild. I'm going to go, bye, I'm pissed. You and Whitney have a nice new relationship. I was really well, oh my God, I'm going to go out into I don't know what to do. Everything's so different. It's so shocking. I'm going to go have my own adventure. And I got out there into the world and I was like, damn, people are, a lot of people are so dishonest and so objectifying of women and treating me so badly. And all I knew from being with you was being treated right, being treated with respect, being treated like a queen. And it was, it clarified for me, instead of me writing a story about how bad you were because we broke up. It actually clarified for me, that's an amazing human being. And I don't care if we're in a relationship or not. I want him in my life forever. And that was part of my awakening back to opening my heart again so we could be friends. There's a lot more I could say, but I'll pause there because it's not all about me and my relationship.
Yeah, I mean, we'll advance the story as we go, but I want to talk about a lot of life is about knowing yourself. Know thyself is one of the first and most important proclamations of any spiritual seeker. Know thyself. And during the time that we were together, I knew that I had a large erotic appetite. And we were super open about that.
Oh, yeah.
However, the frame that was in my mind was that it's normal for men to have a large erotic appetite. However, it is abnormal and non-mammalian in our impulse for women to have a large erotic appetite. So while I celebrated you, whatever you were wearing, however you were doing it, standing on the highest table, on the tallest pedestal, and I was just fucking holding up a torch, like, look at her go. Like, I was super loving that. I didn't have in my mind the frame of polyamory at all. So what we did was we had an expanded version of our monogamy where we would have other lovers, female lovers always. And, we won't name names, but there was other attempted male lovers who'd literally be crawling, like scratching on the door of our bedroom, like a cat that wants to get in and get food when we would have our adventures. And it was beautiful. It was sometimes hard. At the start, it was sometimes hard. But what I felt from you was this just like deep love for me, and also, you're a little bit gay, and so it was mutually.
Turned out it was gay enough.
So it was
a bit gay.
So it was.
Women are lovely.
Yeah, they are indeed. So it was this thing where it was like you loved me and honored me and respected, and you wanted to lavish me with the pleasures that were in my, desirous heart, and actually found great joy in that. And we spread great joy to our lovers. They were like our family. They were like the closest friends to us. And it developed this kind of ohana of people that we were with. And we'd take trips together, and we were all together, and we're still friends, with them, like the key players in that story today, like close.
Yeah.
Like forged a level of closeness. But I didn't have in my mind the possibility that, okay, well, maybe this is something that my female partner would want too. I didn't have the framework that maybe I could just go to you and say, hey, like, I'm really feeling something, for Whitney, maybe we could open this up and maybe you could have other lovers too. And so what happened is we split, which is the typical story, people split. And I built like a wall out of respect for you of like, I'll never cross the erotic or intimate wall with you because I love you and I don't want things to be messy, and I
care about you.
And I care about you.
Yeah. It was a clear, energetic boundary that has stayed ever since, and I'm super grateful for that, actually. I think, at the time, there's all sorts of interpretations that we can make. And I will say, and it is natural when heartbreak happens, which is what happens when, there's separation of love or a transformation or a change or a loss. It was a grieving experience for me to lose our romantic relationship, and we were engaged. And, but I will say this. I can say, looking back, that there was a little deep part of me that sensed during our engagement that there was that wasn't quite what and this is maybe transgressing your agency to say this. I don't know if you felt this or not, but I could sense and kind of brush aside this little awareness that really marriage for you as like, I kind of was like, all right, we've been together 3 years. She just got engaged. Where's my ring? And there was like a little, I don't even know if you remember this.
I didn't really feel that pressure from you, but
Yeah,
I want to talk about that because.
But I sensed it wasn't maybe.
You're pointing to something that's true.
Mm-hmm.
And like, if I'm going to be totally honest, like I'm such a romantic.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd wrote you the engagement poem.
Yeah.
I found you the perfect ring, and we were at the perfect house in the perfect place.
The dream house.
Yeah. And it was the perfect time. And I wept and I gave you the ring.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like, but there was some part of me that you're speaking to that was like, I hope this works. And I hope that in the giving of this ring, it brings us to another level that will allow an evolution to happen where I will be fully satisfied.
Yeah.
And that's not the reason to give a ring. And so I'm culpable and I'm at fault for that moment, even though I don't regret it because it was beautiful and it was one of like my favorite memories of all time. Like I remember like every second of that moment where I got on my knee and I proposed to you. Also, like I've had to look at that. And again, with Whitney, when I did that, it was a similar thing. It was like, I'm giving you a promise, but there's a hidden condition on that is like, I'm making this promise, but I'm doing it in hopes that something will evolve that isn't quite there yet. And that's, I've had to really deeply come to terms with levels of shame and also like guilt because a wedding ring is a promise. And I got both of those rings back and I was like, am I like Sauron, the Lord of broken promises and failed rings? Like, is that who I am, And yeah, like I was able to convince myself in those moments, like this is what I want and I believe in this. But if I was really being honest, there was some part of me that wasn't fully reconciled yet.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for your honesty. And I also knew somehow.
You wrote a poem.
I did. I wrote a poem about your nature. Is it the one about the pirate? Yeah.
It was an old poem.
It was old. No, it was like, I knew a man lips wet with rum or something like that. And the end was while we were together. I was such a brave little poet. I'm like, basically, I don't remember it anymore. I wrote it during a college writing class, poetry class. And, but the essence of it, what came through was like speaking to this knowing that was in my intuition that you weren't really wired to settle down into the white picket fence narrative. And it's kind of heart-wrenchingly ironic because the place we got engaged at was like the ultimate white picket fence house. Totally. It was totally white. Everything was like a storybook. And but we're both, similar creatures in the sense that I think we're both poets. We've talked about this before when our books came out very recently, but I think we both have a little bit of a wild streak that is kind of here I'll at least speak for myself, enjoys the wild adventure of life and like really exploring what it means to be here on this planet. And that happens for you through relationship and through eros intimate, physical intimacy. I know some people out there are real sensitive about the word eros now, but that is what it is. It's eros. It's beautiful. And it is a path. It's a very, I think something that's important and something that I learned here is ultimately at the end of the day, because when we broke up, there was no platforms. You had barely started your podcast. I think you maybe recorded 2 episodes in your living room at that point or something. But just within our community, my family, some of my friends, there was immediately this heartbreak of the broken, fairy tale that we were supposed to be. We represented something to everybody in that chapter of our lives. It was a vision of hope. It was a vision of possibility. And that was heartbreaking for people because their vision broke and their hope broke when we split up. I see some of that happening now in the change of the dynamic with Vi, and that's, for further down the road here. But what I came to evolve through it was a lot of people wanted to make you the bad guy. Once we became friends again, how can you be friends with him? How can you, even think about being friends with him and his new partner and all of these things. And for me, I really came to a few different determinations. One was at the end of the day, I am not interested in monogamy, holding monogamy around a person who doesn't want that construct anymore. It's not something that's interesting to me, really. I want to feel the choice. And if that choice isn't present anymore, that's a gift of honesty, in my opinion. That was a gift of honesty that you gave me, even though it was really uncomfortable. It wouldn't have been a better life for you to swallow and eat your true desires and keep them from me. I wanted the truth. And I've always wanted the truth from every lover and every partner I've had since then. And beyond that, I went on to live in, nightlife in Las Vegas and go through my own, sovereign journeys where I saw all sorts of infidelity and deception. And I don't want to paint the picture that married men are deceptive by any means. I know there are so many wholeheartedly devoted, happily married monogamous men out there and happily committed monogamous men out there. And I also know that there are a lot of people, men and women, who have bound themselves into a commitment, and instead of exploring who they truly are or being honest about who they truly are and being honest about what they really want, have just compartmentalized, hidden that from their partner, and built a relationship of monogamy on top of dishonesty. And that's something that ultimately I felt like if I've learned anything from this, I respect the truth. I respect the honest willingness to be vulnerable and say, I'm learning more about myself and I'm called in this direction and this is what I feel. And I'm brave enough to tell you.
And to me, I think, this was an error we made on the podcast when we called it radical monogamy in the field of erotic mystics. It should have been called radical fidelity. Because fidelity is being faithful to the truth, in my opinion, and that's really what this is all about. Is it's radical fidelity. It's being faithful to the truth. And when so I get together with Whit. 18 months were monogamous-ish. We still had we had lovers that would join us, but I still didn't have this idea that it was normalized that women may want other lovers too. And that information came to me from reading Dr. Chris Ryan's book, Sex at Dawn. And he talked about all of these different indigenous and concurrent cultures that had a different view, and the bonobos and different other mammalian species. And I was like, oh, maybe it's not just me that desires this. Maybe it's okay if my partner desires this. So at that point, I remember I sat down with Whit at our kitchen table and I said, hey, I'm really feeling like I have a polyamorous heart. And like, that's the journey that I want to take. And she was like, got it. Fuck you. Go fuck yourself. I'm out.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I'm really sorry to hear that. I'm so, like, breaks my heart, but I totally understand. Then, one day Whitney comes over to the house and, we are out by the pool and our attraction never stopped. And so we were attracted to each other. I was not in a committed other relationship. We were just dating. So after that experience, she was like, all right, I want to give it a try.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay, well, so you're free to see other people. I'm free to see other people. This is polyamory. It's not a lot of people doing it. I don't know a lot of information about it, but this is what we're going to give a try.
Mm-hmm.
She's like, I'm in. And what I can say is that because I already had a lover, I was the first to be engaging in that, extra relationship. Now, so Whit moved back in pretty much. And then we kept the apartment for a while, but ultimately she was back in. But for that first, I don't know, 8 months, maybe even up to a year, I don't know how long it was just me with another lover. And Whit really had a hard time with it. And when I look back, and I've apologized to Whit like 1,000 times with tears in my eyes for this, like, I didn't have the requisite compassion for how hard it was and how hard it would be. And so I was like, what do you mean? You agreed to this. Like, why are you so upset? Why are you giving me so much grief? Why the emotional reaction? So I was not as sympathetic as I should have been. Like, because I hadn't gone through it myself.
Yeah.
And then she got her first set of lovers. And fuck, it was so hard. It was so hard. The competition, the comparison, the effect on my own self-worth and self-love. It doesn't mean that I didn't fuck up a billion times. Of course I did. And because I had so much pain and trauma that I experienced, and I'm sure she did as well. Like, we were just figuring shit out. But then the crazy part is, at the end of the day, like, I mean, and I'll just stop there, because you were there the whole time. Like, we were all homies in this ride or die clique together.
Yeah. So,
like, this revisionist history that's existing is just so painful for me.
I know.
It's I loved Whit, and I'll always love Whit.
I know. I've watched you. I mean, I understand the ways that sometimes our minds cope with loss and separation. And I've spent a lot of energy these past few weeks trying to make compassionate sense of some of the narratives that have been coming forward as people have put you in this box. And it feels so just unjust to the truth that I've witnessed and that I've lived. And I say that with a whole heart. I don't think you've ever tried to position yourself as an immaculate guru who is never doing anything wrong and is right about everything. What I've seen is you be a bleeding, sweating human being that is wearing your heart on your sleeve and talking about everything that you learned through all of your mistakes for many years now, and simply sharing that with the world. And my experience of you and our relationship of always, you went on to have great success and get a lot more resources, which you pour generously into your lovers and into your employees and your community. And I mean, the list goes on and on. Yeah, it's very tender territory because I've been thinking about this specifically a lot. And as a woman, I see some of the commentary about power dynamics. And, really in this particular most recent case with Alana and Vi, there's been a lot of judgment or speculation about them not feeling truly in their power, truly in their agency, truly choosing the life that they're in because of this imagined power dynamic. And not to say that you don't have power, you don't have great resources, you do. The devastating and frustrating reality of it is that you use them as blessings. I find it not in service and in honor of ourselves to essentially, when we as women make a concession about what it is that we want, what we need, what we feel, whatever that may be, because we want to still get to receive a resource or a resource of some kind or feel secure financially or get to have connections or whatever all of these things might be, if we're silent or compromising those needs because we want to receive those resources, we're not doing ourselves a service, nor are we doing a service to the man either. Like, that's not, it'd be lovely if all the men everywhere who had lots of money and power and resources could just feel into the deep hidden needs and desires of our heart and be like, okay, never mind.
Well,
but that's like
that's fundamentally like, I worked to do that by not creating any leverage.
Yeah.
Like fundamentally anti-leverage. Like no matter what you do, you get all of this unconditionally. Doesn't matter what you decide, doesn't matter what you do. Unconditionally, you have my love and support. I actively work to make sure that there's no leverage at all, which is also why there's no fucking prenup with Vi.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if she wants, like, whatever money she has now is the same amount of money she'd have if she left me.
Yeah. And I think that's something that a lot of people don't know.
It's the same amount. I don't want people to be with me because I have money. I want people to be with me because they fucking love me. Like, that's the whole point.
Mm-hmm.
Real, honest love. Not like some manufactured leverage love. I want to feel love.
But sometimes it's harder to say that, this felt damaging to me simply because I loved him so much, and that's not something he did to me. It just is the truth of the pain of separation, because once you stepped into marriage with Vylana, that created a certain level of separation. And I experienced that, of course, with Whitney originally too, which coming back in as a friend, I had to navigate that for a while and just recognize there is pain in the distance of, not because, if anything sexual even. And this is a challenge of polyamory too. It's just there is a finite amount of time and there's a finite, degree of capacity to be intimately connected, emotionally and present with another person. So when there's, somebody stepping into a primary role, which I know was shocking and painful for Whit and for, other beloveds of yours. And I was right there with them, holding them in that process of that transition. And also, full honesty as your best friend, a little bit like, I knew you were in love with Vylana. I knew you were looking forward and hoping and praying for the day where you could, step into marriage with Vi. But we were all like, oh, this is really fast, So there was I was holding that shockwave, and I understand how difficult that felt. But it is just to wrap that piece up. It is there's an opportunity, I think, at some point to come into the vulnerable surrender of just being like, damn, I miss you. And it's painful. And that pain is so challenging that it's easier on my system to make you a villain. And that's the way that I'm coping with it.
Yeah.
I did that I never made you a villain, but I created distance for a while. I had to for a couple of years. And then I found my way back by keeping my heart open, because you are actually a really wonderful person, a really rare and unique type of soul. And I always wanted to be close with you, even if it was different.
And then Vi is single. And then all of a sudden, like, it's like, wow, I get my chance.
I'm going for it.
I'm fucking going for it. And I'd had so much pain in the polyamory journey. Like, and if you go back and listen or read my old newsletters or listen to my old podcasts, I talk ad nauseum. Mm-hmm. Like, to the point where people were like, stop fucking talking about how much this hurts. Like, literally. Like, I got more messages like, we get it. So I was talking ad nauseum about the pain of this situation. So I was like, this is so painful. And then Vylana's free, and I'm like, I'm fucking going all in. There's no way I'm losing. I'm not gonna waste my shot. I'm not gonna waste my shot. And so I've had to ask, like, in that moment, was I being manipulative, or was I just blind? And I know in the marrow of my bones that whether it was a self-serving bias, whether it was fear she was going to be with somebody else, whether it was the pain and trauma lens that I was looking through based on what I'd experienced, I was like, I'm in. We'll be monogamous. We'll have an expanded version. That was always our agreement. We would have other lovers. We'd have an expanded version, but I'm down with this monogamy thing because this other thing was so fucking painful.
I mean, when you went for Vi and you were like, I'm going for it. I'm proposing. Like, I was like, easy, easy there. You sure?
For sure.
And you, in the privacy of our conversation, take it for what you will, anybody who's listening to this, but I can testify, like, in the privacy of our conversations, which have like no holds barred, like we share everything.
We share everything. There's no risk. I'm not trying.
He tells me his secret desires, even though they hardly exist. Like, always for years and years. And so, when he came to me with this, since it was sincere, it was earnest. It was like, and I was like, this feels fast. Because I knew you. I knew your nature. And I was like, I've watched you. It's like, I've known you for a really long time. And like, are you sure monogamy is going to work? And so I had some of those thoughts, but I also wanted to just bless the truth of your experience. And something I want to say here really quickly is I think we don't give enough grace to the perfection, call it the karmic path, call it, the fate or destiny or whatever it might be. I've had, some people in little moments when I got into the fray over the past few weeks be like, how can you let Vylana do this? How can you let Aubrey do this? You're not a true friend or whatever. And it's like, have you ever tried to tell somebody, anybody, your family member, your best friend, what they should do? That it doesn't work like that. You don't want people to learn because I told you so. Like, hey, Aubrey, I'm not sure that you're cut out for monogamy. Take my word for it and just don't propose to the woman that you love. It's not how it works. We all we gain wisdom. We get to know ourselves, know thyself through experience. And so whatever experience you choose is actually the perfect architecture for what you're here to learn, what you're here to discover about your true nature. And that's really painful in situations. I know some people very close to me who've been in catastrophically abusive relationships. And I have prayed and cried and felt shaken of like, how are you ever going to get out of this? Are you going to live through this? Advice, prayers, like, you can't drag a man to the altar, they say. And so I know the difference between sitting beside somebody who is still of their sovereignty, of their will, of their desire, choosing a path that's dangerous and self-destructive. In certain situations, it's important to express that. But I deeply know at this point in my life, after 42 years of life, that we learn through the experiences that we choose, and we have to find a way to trust each other's souls. And so in that moment, I was like, I was also stoked for you because Vylana is amazing. And I knew that this was something that you had deeply hoped for. And so I was unsure if you'd transition all the way into like monogamous Aubrey forever, but you did for a period of time, and it was sincere. And you came to learn more about your true nature. And so the story unfolded, you know?
You remember that when it was early on, and I was in the middle of the bed, and I had you and Vi on either side, and we were doing a meditation.
Clothes on, platonic.
Yeah. It's always, and it's just so people know, you know, those accusing Caitlyn of being in the sex cult. It's been a fucking long time since we've had sex. Like fucking
a whole nother lifetime.
15 fucking years. Yes. So everybody relax.
And I'm officially engaged.
Yes.
To one of Aubrey's best friends. And
indeed.
My beloved Eric.
And my fucking beloved Eric. Eric is the fucking dopest.
Yeah.
He's the best.
But yeah, we were in a
so
lovely
but in that moment, you know, it was like there was a big tikkun, which is lineage word for repair, that I could feel that happened in the field of honesty and a field of like integrity between you and Vi, where like
it's the beginning of our true sisterhood that was always meant to be.
Exactly. And so, you know, so we have this period, and there's, of course, like I'd seen Vylana's light, I'd seen a little bit of, you know, the craziness that happened between you and her, but I always like ascribed that to third person, and but I just went fucking all the way in. You know, I had signs, and people criticized me for the signs that I got, but I got a crazy sign with Vi. You know, like I got this visual of a fucking blinding star in my third eye, Burning Man 2017, after me and Vi had an intimate moment, and like so I've had signs that, you know, Vi was like, "Don't forget this, dummy." You know, and so I've followed the signs and followed the lessons, and I just went in, and then we had a wild and also somewhat tumultuous ride as we, you know, you don't really know someone until you see their shadow, and she saw mine and I saw hers, and we're really like twin flames. Like Vi and I were laughing. We were just in Bodrum and we're laughing like,
they look alike.
We're really like the same person in the opposite sex. Which is so the most exciting and the most like thrilling and the most fucking challenging.
Yeah.
And we've triggered each other intensely. And then we were in this kind of expanded monogamy kind of context, and we met Alana. Both of us were looking to meet somebody, and we had some failed attempts of meeting somebody. Blessings to all them. They're great people, but it wasn't the right fit. And you know, some were actually really dope and beautiful, and some, you know, didn't work out. But we were like both in this kind of, all right, let's find someone that could be a travel companion and be someone who can be like our friend and ally and potentially lover, and somebody who could go. And then there were signs that led to Alana, and then ultimately, like the meme that's going on is about that final sign that I got when we were just in this kind of friends and lovers and allies kind of category, but still in the monogamy frame. I got this voice that came in the Isis temple in Egypt. And now you could say that this was a projection of my subconscious desires to have children with multiple people, but I've never really been a big children guy.
No.
Like that's not been something I'm like, I just can't wait to procreate. I need to spread my seed. You know, like that's
not
like,
at all.
That's like not my, but
you're going to be a great dad, but it's not been
and I'm looking forward to that for sure. No. But again, it could be that. It could be some
it's not a kink or fantasy to have a bunch of children for you.
That's
and
not.
It is for some men.
It is for some men. And some men want to fucking Genghis Khan out and just like change the fucking genetics of an entire population. I don't consciously have that, but it's possible. But anyways, this fucking voice comes in, and again, I've been a psychonaut since I was 18, and I've learned the discernment between like the type of voices that I hear. And this voice was, have children with them. And I was like, fuck. And I called you first.
Mm-hmm.
But I was like, what the fuck?
It was another moment.
I was like, what
like,
the actual fuck do
it'd
I
be
do with this?
elaborate to make that up and then call me just to like strengthen the story. Like, it was a sincere experience for you. And something I want to interject real quick that I feel kind of passionate about after watching this all unfold is I don't love the ridicule that I see around you getting to talk about the signs that you experience. I understand the skepticism, the, concern, the, like, all of the different interpretations that have come up. But I just want to name, like, I think it's a beautiful thing especially for a man. Like, there's not a lot of examples of permission for men to get to tune in to what feels like your intuition or, a voice or a vision or something that inspires you that kind of like defies, logic. And I think that we need to nurture that a little bit, and that kind of ridicule around like, oh, you heard a voice, or, we have there's lots of love stories where there's an intuition. There was also the kind of sneering about the Raya impulse. And why is it okay in some circumstances where, people might say, I had this funny feeling I should just go out that night. And then they meet somebody at a bar, or they meet somebody at the library. I felt called to the library that day, or I had this interesting dream, right? And yes, that can be sometimes projection. It also might be divine direction. It also might be the gnosis of your soul. And we have to make space to allow people to have their own, conversations with the soul and with what feels like the divine to you. And that was a sincere experience of that for you, one that was costly, confusing, and deeply uncomfortable.
Well, yeah. And this whole Raya thing, Vi and I were both on Raya because we weren't meeting people out in the real world. I mean, we went out to dinner in Miami. So we were in Miami. We went out to dinner, and there was clearly some escort who this other rich man had hired that came over to our dinner table and was like, hey, you guys interested in playing and blah, blah, blah. And we were like, no, this is not what we're looking for. We're looking for a soulmate. We're looking for a whole mate. We're looking for someone who can be with us. And
we can really bond with.
So we opened ourselves to the digital sphere. Both of us had accounts. Vi was looking. I was not even actually that aggressively looking, but I just got a fucking message.
And I remember Vi proudly showing me your Raya account. Vi did,
of course, and we had a picture. We had a picture of both of us in that, and clearly, there was no deception at all.
No. So,
all right, I get this message, and I was like, okay, you're gonna find somebody, and we found Alana, immediately, just like my intuition had. All right, so. Whatever it was, you could say, oh, okay, he's just making that shit up. He was searching all the time, and then fucking he finally felt whatever. You believe whatever you want. I'm not here to change people's minds, but this is the reality of what fucking happened.
Yeah.
And then, so we invited Alana. Alana and Vi clicked it off. They started talking about Hawaii. It was a great thing. And then we went into a beautiful, sacred space together where we got to deeply know each other. There was nothing sexual about it. And then we realized whoa, Alana has a soul nature that is really remarkable to behold. And you know Alana really well. And she's a very special human being. Mm-hmm. That's the right word. And Vi and I are
there's an aura about her.
Vi and I are the same, we're two sides of the same coin. We're bridgers. Yeah. We're fierce warriors and have a lot of bad and a lot of good. And and Alana is we really felt oh, wow, this is next gen consciousness that we're encountering. And then months play out, etc. And the friendship turns romantic. And then, more months and more months play out. And then I get this message this voice that's super, super abnormal. I usually don't get a fucking voice. I mean, I've had lots of visions, but I get a fucking voice in this temple. Okay, it just happened that way. Then I call you and I'm like, what the fuck? This is not, this is like a disaster. Like, this is not, this is a fucking disaster. And I was like, what the fuck do I do with this? And you're like, I don't know, sit with it.
Yeah,
and you're like,
sit
and we
with
were
it,
talking
like-
about maybe, and we were thinking, all right, maybe this could be that you're supposed to birth like a book, or you're supposed to birth a project. Maybe the child is just a metaphor for something else. So I'm like holding all of these possibilities of like,
Truly
yeah,
holding
totally.
it, yeah.
Like totally it could be all of that. Then, Vi and I are, lying in bed and on the Nile, and she's like, and I told her, I was like, look, I just had an experience in the sanctum sanctorum of this temple, and like, I'm not ready to talk about it. She's like, what happened? What happened in the sanctum sanctorum? What happened? What happened? And I was like, fuck, like I'm not ready to share this but I shared it. And it was utter chaos. I mean, I don't need to go into the details, but like I was at the point where I was ready to throw myself in the fucking Nile. Like it was like an absolute disaster.
Yeah.
And so if this was some secret manipulative plan, it was like the fucking worst way. Like you'd want to kind of warm the situation up, allow things to play out. But like I told the truth and it was a fucking nightmare.
Yeah. And I will say for you, you're not one to realize something for, it's not always like absolutely the everlasting truth and the way, capital V way. But when you have a realization about something that you're feeling, desiring, whether this is in business, employment, creative decisions, relationship, you come forward with it. And, it's not, and I think it's a really, it's not a comfortable thing for most people, actually. Like a lot of us, I'll say for myself, I feel safer holding, like, I'm like, oh, I'm having these feelings, or, what if this is the way, or, and like holding that tension out of fear of discomfort to speaking the truth of what's present. You have a kind of superpower that can, erupt into lots of chaos, because it's like, I'm feeling this, I'm seeing this, and I'm not going to like keep it from you. I'm not going to hold that tension between us.
And that's like, that to me is fidelity. It's like really saying what is. I mean, I remember when we were in an Iboga journey, and Iboga told me that, our path was supposed to split.
We were engaged.
And I wrestled with Iboga for 8 hours. And Iboga told me we were supposed to split, and we're in the afterglow of this unbelievable experience. And I was like, hey, Casey, like, I got to tell you that, like, Iboga told me that we need to split. And the part that, like, I don't even want to, I'm like shy to share the rest, because I've seen what people do with everything I say. But like Iboga showed me a future that looks very similar to this future that I have now, and but without the details.
I can say, so if it helps for people listening to hear this frame, we can look at it like Iboga showed me, and that is the experience that you had. We can also look at it like Iboga unlocked an aspect of your consciousness that the self, the capital S self that knows the path you're meant to walk, was able to communicate with you through that medicine and show you whether, again, and I will say, I think this was part of what was meant for you. I don't think that this was a secret, selfish desire of you wanting to break up with me. We were very happy, know, and you did tell me, like, the next morning when we were in the afterglow of that ceremony, which was my first big ceremony, and we were engaged and we were happy. And you said, I don't know what to think of this yet, but I saw a future where I was traveling around, giving these talks and things. You didn't even have your platform yet.
Yeah.
And we weren't together. I was on my own. And I felt a little shell-shocked, and I also felt like open and curious and a little disturbed and everything all at once. And then, but I just kind of like let myself hold that. And, within about 4 months, we split. And again, like, do I hold that over you as some kind of strange manipulation that you used Iboga for? No, that was your experience, and I believe it to be earnest. And I don't think you've done anything but get more conscientious and thoughtful and, mature with how you were quite mature for your age back then, but I've seen you grow in compassion and discernment and thoughtfulness over the years, just as we all do, unless we're kind of like stuck at one level of the game. And so I take these things that you're sharing, as earnest shares. And I think it's really important for us to be able to hold each other's stories with dignity. Like, generally speaking, it's very precious to be able to share a story. It's very healthy for us. And this is a tangent, but something I felt really passionate about coming on here and speaking to is just every time we take, somebody comes out and reveals something about themselves publicly and shares it with the world, and we react like a collective sort of groupthink or mob mentality kind of has a reactive response to that and shames it. We might feel like, oh, I'm just going to shame this one person for sharing this thing that they shouldn't have shared. That was irresponsible to share that, or whatever the story might be. Well, guess what? You just sent out a broadcast to everyone watching, everyone looking at these comments who has had a vision, who has had an intuition, who is in a polyamorous relationship, who is holding a secret or tender or vulnerable desire in their hearts. You've sent out a broadcast to everyone who can relate to this story and said, shame, shame, shame. Don't ever talk about it. Don't ever tell your partner. Don't you dare ever come forward with that. That's a shame bomb that creates so much dysfunction and deception and fracturing of the psyche and the emotional body that I think is the root of all violence and evil on this planet ultimately. Because the more we compartmentalize these truths that feel a little bit different than the status quo, and we start to hide them from the rest of the world, we get these fractured parts of ourselves that don't feel and don't believe that they can be loved. And that denial of the self, that denial of self-love turns into so much pain between human beings and disease and regret at the end of our lives. And so I know it's been very hard for you, but I'm grateful that you're being brave right now and coming back on here and sharing even more. And I hope that with time, everyone who's tracking this story can start to be more open to anybody sharing the truth of their experience, even if it's a little bit unusual, even if it's a little bit uncomfortable. Yeah. I mean, I know I've been in relationship dynamics during my, pre-Eric years where I was in relationships with poly or open married couples and knew the wife, knew the husband, multiple. And those women were some of the most powerful women I've ever fucking known. And
Amen.
I just want to advocate for the normalization of the diversity of authentic experience that we actually all have.
Mm. Well, thank you for sharing that, Casey. And I think you're really right. We as a culture has made great strides in the general acceptance of, let's just call it the queer community for, although that there's specifics that extend beyond that, but just those things which are not the status quo. And many of these groups have gathered and they've earned their rights after like years of persecution that have been horrible. Mm-hmm. And they've earned the right to actually claim who they are and what they are, and then be protected for what their experience is. And I can't help but notice that in this particular situation, this is something that's queer for people. And queer meaning strange, like unusual, like out of the ordinary, not the status quo. And I know there may be other definitions of queer that I may not be aware of. So all sensitivity and apologies for if I'm misusing the term. However, nonetheless, like this is an expression of something that falls outside the status quo. And while certain aspects of that are celebrated by culture, like good for you, congratulations. In this particular instance, it's been the opposite version. You know, hearing a voice is queer. It's strange. It's out of the ordinary. It's not part of the consensus. Having a expanded understanding of relationship is currently, according to the status quo, it's unusual. It's not expected.
And seemingly more disruptive than divorce.
That's the other thing. It's like, I mean, people who are, like Vi and I had a choice. Vi spent 3 months in isolation when this came to be. And she's talked about it on her podcast. This was one of the
her own choice. I want to make that very clear.
Yeah, exactly. Like she spent 3 months to be with herself and decide.
Choose.
Like, what do I really want? You know, and what would really actually be what my soul wants? What is the life that I want to live? It's not because she wouldn't have had money if she chose the other path. It's because she wanted this love and she wanted this expanded possibility. And I think that's the other part of the story that people don't get. Like, we had a choice for divorce and ultimately love prevailed. So these people who are a stand for the traditional values, well, one of the traditional values is you stay together and you honor your commitment. Okay, well, we did that, but where's the support for that? You know, like we chose to stay together. We chose to update the agreement, just like if you're in a business partnership agreement and situations and terms change, you renegotiate the agreement to see if you can still say partners or if there needs to be a settlement. And you go and you live different lives and somebody, you know, this is how agreements work. And we chose to honor our agreement. And, you know, Alana chose also to honor the agreement under certain, you know, kind of structure that we all agreed on. All of us chose to be in this. That's what we chose. And is it the right choice? I don't know. I feel like it is, but I'm not sure if it's the right choice. And that's also one of the beautiful things that have come up from all of this, all of these voices. They've read through thousands of comments and at least 1,000 of them says, Vylana, run, Alana, run. Like, if I was like trying to manipulate this situation, do you think I would have exposed them to thousands of voices telling them to get the fuck away?
Yeah.
It's absurd. Yeah. I would be the worst manipulator of all time. Like the classic mark of any manipulation is you keep people in isolation.
Yeah.
This is the anti-isolation. Here's every voice that might play on every fear that you've had. And we've had to have all those hard conversations like, is this going to fucking work? Is this what we all truly want? And we're still having those conversations, but it's looking like it is. Like it's looking like fucking hey. Like we really actually are choosing this. And I genuinely believe that while monogamy, like we said on the fucking podcast, it works most of the time for most people. But with adultery rates looking like a fucking Bitcoin chart going up and, you know, divorce rates, you know, at least 40% for the first marriages, going way higher for the second and third marriages, there's a need for other solutions. And these other solutions they're just not like making them up out of thin air. It's the same way the Lakota people used to live with modifications or the Himba people used to live. There's been millions of different cultures who've lived by different structures. And yes, there's a short period of the kind of polygyny culture, like even in the Mormon culture, like polygyny, where the men get to have multiple wives, but the women can't have other husbands. Like, it's not this either.
Mm-hmm.
This is something totally different. Like, and I could see what happened when Vi got with Josh,
Mm-hmm.
because then she got it. Like, before it was hypothetical, but when she started to love Joshua,
Mm-hmm.
then she got it. She would go spend a night with him. They'd play music. They'd make love. And I trusted him to tend the garden and return the garden back to me more flourishing than the way I left it.
Yeah.
And that's the way it is with Alana. When I spend a night with Alana, the garden of Aubrey Marcus returns to Vylana more nourished, more replenished, and more in love.
Yeah.
And that's possible. And I'm
Not easy.
It's not easy. It's fucking so hard. It's like, it sometimes feels like you're crawling through broken glass and 6 inches of salt water. Like, it's fucking hard. And it's possible. And
Eric's constantly like, I just don't have the energy for, like, I don't know how, you know.
And that's the other thing, like, people think, the amount of processing.
Yeah.
And the amount of conversations. And I'm so
like,
much.
It's not like there's the king getting fed, like, grapes in his chair, by all of his women. It's pretty brutal, a lot of the time.
And fortunately,
and so beautiful.
And fortunately, like, I had a lot of hard practice.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I dealt with shit that was really difficult. So when Vi wanted to go to Unison Festival with Josh, I was like, okay, like, I can bless that. But it doesn't mean that there weren't hard moments. Like, she spent a sunrise with him on the playa, and it brought up a lot of old memories of pain. I walked out at sunrise and just found myself at an installation and was just crying, by myself. And then some fucking wanker comes with a camera and is like, hey, Aubrey Marcus, I want to interview you. And I'm like, no, now's not the time. And then but I did it anyways, like a fucking idiot. And then he's there to make fun of me. And I'm like, I'm just fucking grieving a private moment here. But it's fucking crazy. But anyways, it's not like, even still, like, there were still things that came up. But the fact that it's hard is not a bug of the system. It's a feature.
Yeah.
It's like, if you're actually devoted to evolution, which I am, Vylana is, Alana is, like, moving through challenges with your choice, your volition. Like, everybody chooses to go do a Wachuma ceremony with Maestro Alejo that's hard. Everybody chooses, we chose to go, sit with a boga. You choose, and it's fucking hard.
Yeah.
But you trust that on the other side of that choosing, there's going to be growth and there's going to be benefit.
There's always a massive gift for courage. I've learned that through my life. And man, I love to just, like, lean back from the resistance sometimes. But the courage that it takes to say yes to an experience is directly equivalent to exponential reward. Even if it isn't direct or it isn't clear yet, it's always going to result in a reward of having earned the wisdom of that experience. And that's some of the greatest elixir for the soul that I think there is. And, I'll say, as somebody who's now in a monogamous relationship, I am learning, after I had a long journey of all sorts of different kinds of situations, a couple more partnerships, some open relationship constructs in the years that followed our relationship. And I'm back in the configuration of monogamy with my partner. And it's also got challenges, and it's also hard, and it's a beautiful path. And I'm loving that. And, something that came up for us in, like, our discussion as we all talked about this was just some of the complexities with women for feeling like, it's confronting to imagine, like, I think monogamy and marriage, they're kind of set up for us as an ideal that's sort of like a grail quest for safety and security, and we want to feel like there's a stable rock that we can stand on. And I think that's really important in relationship. And I think there's a really interesting dance to do. And you're still in the exploration of this and discovering it. All of you are. And we all are, really, because even in monogamy, there's all sorts of veils of how much do I really tell my partner because that might make them uncomfortable? Or can I be fully honest about my erotic desires or my, even my dreams sometimes, right? It's like there's so much comfort that gets built into wanting to have that safety that sometimes we exchange true intimacy for that comfort.
Yeah.
And I think that if we can take anything away from this, it's like, how can we all get a little bit more curious and excited about what like true, brave intimacy could do for us? Like our life force, our power, our clarity, our understanding of ourselves. And I think for something that's a little bit confronting, I can imagine for women is, and I've been feeling into it myself because my nature, while I'm very open-minded, obviously, I'm sitting here with my former fiancé, and I've had a really wild path, and I love it. I wouldn't change anything. If I could go back and wave a magic wand and like, you're such a wonderful man, and I love you so much. But like, if you really honestly ask me, okay, if Aubrey like hadn't made that choice at that point, even though we were so happy and it caused, such a big heartache, would you go back and just stay together? And I can't say that at all. I'm grateful that you followed what felt like the truth that you were experiencing in that moment, because then I got to have the whole adventure that was my life and ultimately meet my partner now, and have all of these experiences that help me get to know myself and understand the world. But my essence is very devoted. I'm very loyal. Like I bond a lot with people with, chapters of my life.
Big sugar glider energy.
Big. I'm like, I need lots of hugs. I have strong bonds. I'm a very fierce bonder. And I think not to reduce this phenomenon down to like biological or evolutionary biology, but generally speaking, women err on the side of prioritizing and valuing bonds more than we have learned over generations of being in particular dynamics to follow and honor and get to speak the truth of our desires and to actually follow the calling of the self. And I think that there's I think it pokes a little bit at the shadow part for some of us women who have compromised so much following the self to stay bonded with, and that's a part of our beauty. It's how we bond to our children. It's how we stay in devotion in our families. But I think that there's something really confronting, and it really like shakes up the whole structure of reality as we've come to understand it when we see different choices being made, like, oh, that man's really following his, like the calling of his self. And oh, is that what we can't fathom, that the woman could really be following the calling of herself? Because unconsciously, so often, we're sort of ignoring the calling of ourselves to honor these beautiful bonds that we have. And no path is the right path. It's not a better and righter path to follow, be unwavering in devotion to the calling of the self. It's important, and it's also a beautiful and immensely valuable part of being alive as a human being to follow the path of the honoring of the bonds. Our bonds are how we know ourselves in the world. Our bonds are our mirrors. Our bonds, our relationships are the way we discover more about ourselves. That's why monogamy also works.
Yeah.
So there's just an opportunity for more open-mindedness about like, these are two different paths and we can have both,
Yeah, 100%. And, I think if you look at the actual statistical data in the aggregate, which Dr. Wednesday Martin wrote about in her book, Untrue. And I really recommend that people read this book, Untrue. It's a phenomenal book. And what it'll show is that in the aggregate, women's sexual attraction to their monogamous partner falls off a cliff after about 2.5 years. Like after about 2.5 years, that desire goes away. Now, mimetically, we understand this. There's this whole idea of a married man getting lucky when his wife wants to have sex with him.
That's a thing.
That's a thing.
Or at least it was for a long, long time.
Like it's culturally a thing. Like, oh, I'm going to get lucky tonight. What do you mean? This is your partner. Your eros should be like expanding and growing. And part of this is a lack of understanding the technology of more tantric, erotic deepening where you can encounter the stranger at different levels. Mm-hmm. So, but also there's a biological function. So people imagining that women's sexual desire doesn't exist and once they bond, they're just happy forever. It's not actually supported by the data. The data is that actually for men, it declines gradually. It's like a slow, steady decline, but they're always interested in their wife. But for women, it just really actually goes down pretty severely. So oftentimes it's women when they're in their truth that are desiring these polyamorous situations. And also, from my experience, it's way fucking harder for men to imagine their partner with another man than it is for women to imagine their partner with another man. I mean, people are like, Aubrey, you got the life, man. And I'm like, yeah? All right, so imagine your beloved and imagine some other man just fucking finishing the deadlift doggy style. And they're like, fuck no, never mind. You know, like, never mind, bro. Like, I'm good. And that's over and over and over the response. So, like, this is part of this kind of cultural moment that we're in where there's truths that we don't want to speak about. And I think part of the inflammation that was created from our podcast, sure, there's a billion things we could have done better on that podcast. Like, I'm not saying that we did it perfectly. We did it honestly, but not perfectly. And it was incomplete in some parts. And we had no strategy. We didn't even really know why we were doing it. We were just felt like we needed to tell the truth because we told it to all the Fit for Service people. We'd shared it, you know, to a lot of people. So it was like, all right, we gotta come out with this.
Well, I just want to reflect also, I think because it's always been fundamental to the way that you've shared over time, whether that was about, you know, a plant medicine journey or a teacher that you worked with or something that you discovered in your business path or relationship especially, you've always shared that publicly. And that's been kind of a fundamental implicit agreement that you have with your audience. And so I can understand the sort of this is very outside of the box for a lot of people and might feel threatening to the safety structure that they feel like they've built in their sacred union or their marriage or their monogamous partnership, et cetera. And so with that sense of perceived threat, there can be an interpretation of a motive or, you know, an agenda of trying to make this the better way, the better thing, the right thing, and impress that upon culture. But I just want to testify that I felt the tension, however mild, for as long as you had been in this journey with Vi and Alana, which is like, you know, the public that I have a implicit agreement of truth with has this story about our relationship. And I want to honor the truth of our relationship. And I want to honor the audience that has, you know, granted me their attention over the past 15 years and be in truth. And that's all that was really there. And I think there's elements also there of honoring Alana, you know, and letting her be understood as a human being and as a complex being that's, you know, a very important part of your life and a person that's present for everything that you do and giving her an opportunity to have a voice in this community, you know? And so, you know, I know it's been like, oh, why did we do this? But it's like, I just want to mirror back to you. Like there's a good and innocent and sincere reason that wasn't about an agenda of trying to persuade anybody into this relationship construct. But yeah.
And that's, I think that's the big thing. I mean, I do have an agenda, and the agenda is that I really deeply feel that I'm here to be a catalyst for human evolution in whatever way that is. And I don't always do it right. I fuck up all the time. And I'm not even all good. Like,
oh no.
Like, we have a joke. It's like, you're bad.
You're bad.
You're bad. And like, yeah, I know. I'm bad and I'm good. And I'm bad and I'm good.
Deeply good. You're human.
I'm human.
You're human.
Like, I'm a real live human being who's complex. But ultimately, like, I mean, you've known me through all of these fucking years. Have you ever seen me to be abusive to anyone?
Never. And I've not only never seen you be abusive to anybody, I've never seen you even speak badly about anybody. You make little teasing jokes with your friends, but I've never heard you, even people who've hurt you really badly, which has happened, I have never heard you speak of anyone the way that some people, not everyone, but some people have spoken about and to you recently. And there's the reason I'm sitting here, among many collective reasons that are important to me and that are values to me, is because you deserve to be supported in the truth of who you are and how you be when nobody's watching. And I'm one of the few people in your path that's got to be there when no one else is watching for 18 years. And so, there's something, I think, I feel like there's something happening here in the story and the narrative of, when whatever happens in ourselves when we pedestalize somebody and we make them, there's this like following guru kind of mimetic trend going around. And it's like, for me as your best friend, I've never seen you try to be anybody's guru. I've always seen you try to just be honest about being a human being. And you've never hidden your sex life, your relationship truth, the truth of your heart, or, nights of partying in Miami or trips to, go sit humbly at the feet of maestros and platform and create documentaries with your own money of medicine keepers from indigenous traditions whose stories would never be heard otherwise. You've poured so much into good causes that you have found along your path and done everything in your power to give a spotlight to the people who you feel really deserve it, that can really help the world. And I can't sleep comfortably at night knowing that all of that goodness could be obscured from the public being receptive to the truth of it because of this, what I believe to be gross misinterpretation of your character. And so I hope that me being here with you today I hope this can be an opportunity for people to see you as you truly are. Because what you're creating and in service to is really, it's really needed right now. And because you deserve it. I'm so sorry.
Like, I also needed this. Like, I needed this too. And like, Yeah, it fucking hurts. And yeah, it fucking sucks. But, I was still as brave as I was to share what I shared and do what I did. Like, I was still somewhat trapped by my desire to be liked. And now I know that that's ephemeral, and it doesn't change my love for the world. It doesn't change what I'm going to do. And if I need to be the villain, I'll be the villain. And if I need to be the hero, I'll be the hero. And I'll be whatever I need to be. And that's the best of me speaking. The bad, worst of me isn't speaking the same way. It wants to raise a sword and clang it on my shield. Fucking come for me, let's go. But the best of me is like, I love you all. Like, I love you all so much. And it's been a battle between those parts of me, and I think this is the rite of passage, and it comes, you were with me in this recent crazy ceremony where I was bestowed 2 unprecedented blessings from Chief Bearcross and Maestro Alejo, and like, okay. And I went back after the blessing from Chief Bearcross, and he gave me the buffalo bonnet, and I came back to buy, and I was like, this is the most incredible blessing I've ever gotten, but it's a hell of a responsibility. And this is part of the responsibility, is to be the one that faces the storm no matter what the consequences are. And
to have the capacity to purify the energy through your own heart.
Yeah.
Which I think I'm seeing you do, which is huge. It's not an easy task to hold all of this and to stay open. It's not an easy task to keep our hearts open.
Yeah.
In pain like that. I can't imagine.
Well, so it is. Thank you, Caitlyn. I love you so much. I mean, as much as timelines could have shifted and we could have ended up staying together forever, and like, I wouldn't trade this timeline for anything because it's so beautiful, And Whit, if you're out there listening, and you ever want to have a conversation with me, like, I'm here. I still love you. I always will. And anybody else who has a problem, like, I still love you and I always will. And it's the truest nature of who I am. And, this is forging that truth. And I needed this to forge that truth. I needed to know this about myself. What would happen underneath all the pressure? What would happen underneath all the hate? Who would I be? Would it change who I am? And it's not like I'm a finished product. I'm not a baked Toll House cookie. It's still a little too gooey to take off the sheet. But yeah, this was the rite of passage that I needed. And just thank you so much. Also, there's been so many people who've been so supportive. Like, so many people, not just people who know us. Like, so many people have reached out with such heartfelt gratitude, and I just want to acknowledge them, because so much can be focused on the negative, but it's ignoring this massive positive outpouring that's come, and all the conversations that have happened because of this that wouldn't have happened otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
And so, God is a chef that doesn't just serve up cotton candy. Sometimes it's just bitters.
Ooh, that's
it's just
true.
bitters.
But we wouldn't want to eat something sweet all the time, would we?
No.
We're here for the whole buffet.
The whole buffet. No doubt. I'm here with the whole buffet for you. To the end, Katie.
To the end.
I believed in you from the moment I saw you, and I've never wavered in that belief.
You haven't. And I'm so grateful that I didn't close my heart or my eyes to the truth of your heart. And I want to thank you for, I've watched you bless so many human beings on this path. I've watched you create so much beauty When we were apart, there was nothing you owed me, and there was nothing I owed you. We were totally separated, totally in our own worlds. And anytime there was a point of contact, there was loving energy. There was never an ounce of manipulation, only an open heart, open arms ready there and waiting to reflect and to remind me how great I truly was. And that love has kept me clear, kept me able to love myself, called me forward into a life that I'm very proud of. And I'm proud to stand in and testify to the goodness of this life that I've lived, which is inextricable from your character and who you are. And so thank you for seeing me. Thank you for never being one of those men. There were so many men that couldn't honor me. And when you had no reason to be that, you were the clean mirror the whole time that helped me remember my worth.
And one of my life's great honors. Love you, Kate.
I love you too.
All right. If you stayed with us till the end here, thank you. I love you guys, all of you. And I love you, Kate.
I love you too. We're going to get through this.
No doubt. And buy your fucking poetry book. It's incredible. Ridiculous masterpiece.
Thank you. His too, actually.
All right. Goodbye, everybody.
Thanks for tuning into this video. Make sure you hit subscribe. Follow me at Aubrey Marcus. Check out the Aubrey Marcus podcast, available everywhere. And leave a comment. Let me know if this video resonated or what else you would like to hear from me in the future. Thank you so much.